now gives me great pleasure to introduce someone who needs no introduction. Valerie Jarrett is the Senior Advisor to the President and the Chair of the White House Council on Women and Girls. Her impressive biography can be found in your materials. Her commitment to advancing rights and opportunities for women and girls, and her vision for how to embed that commitment in the federal government and beyond are truly remarkable. I am so honored to be part of the incredible team that she has assembled in the White House. Thank you, Valerie.
Well, good morning, everyone. I think it's the first time I have ever been welcomed by a mariachi band at what feels like the crack of dawn, and surrounded in an audience by so many amazing women and a few brave men. We're glad to have you here with us as well. Carrie, I thank you for that introduction. I thank you for your public service. I know what a sacrifice it is for you to come in. You do have big shoes to fill. Lynn has really big feet, but you have laced up those shoes and you are running full speed ahead, and I have enjoyed our partnership immensely. So thank you, Carrie, for your service. Sandra, David, and your entire team, well, it speaks for itself. Just look around you. It's an amazing group that's pulled together. I'm delighted that we're on social media, something that I have joined recently, because what we really like to do is to engage. That's what we consider the landmark of the Obama administration, is to ensure that you are helping inform the decisions that we make, and that's what you have done. Love your theme, inspired by progress, inspired by purpose. It's a sentiment that we certainly share in the White House, beginning with President Obama and Vice President Biden, and we know that tone starts at the top. Our progress over the last 6.5 years, and you heard a bit of it from Carrie, is in large part due to our engagement with you. I was very proud in March of 2009 when President Obama formed the White House Council on Women and Girls, which I've had the honor of chairing over the last 6.5+ years. And the Council's mission is very simple. It is to ensure that we are focusing on the empowerment of girls and women. In every program, in every policy, and every piece of legislation, broadly throughout the administration. You've heard from the CDC and the Department of Justice, two important partners, but every single member of the President's cabinet sits on the Council on Women and Girls because he understands that the challenges and opportunities we face are everywhere, and we need to make sure that every part of the administration is engaged in this effort. We often say that talent is ubiquitous, but opportunity is unfortunately not. And there are many reasons for that, and there are many solutions, but sexual assault and sexual violence is a huge impediment, and since the very beginning, we have made it a priority to focus on that right up with national security, economic security, and our entire agenda, because we cannot be safe and economically sound as a country if there are people in our country who are victims of sexual assault. It needs to end, and it needs to end right now. And we need to be inclusive in our approach. Carrie mentioned the LGBT community, the disabled community, senior citizens, women of color, those who serve in our military, all groups that have traditionally felt marginalized. Well, we want to ensure that they are front and center and included in our policies every single day. We have to prioritize this ending of sexual assault. Carrie just described what we've accomplished together, and in my time remaining, I want to describe how we intend to maximize every single moment that we have left entering into the second half of the fourth quarter. I'm not that good with sports analogies, but I know the end is growing near, and we're not going to miss a single moment. I've always said that the president is a fourth quarter player, and when everybody else tends to take their foot off the pedal, he pushes down hard, and he encourages all of us to do the same. So we have two goals in our time left. Number one is to put the spotlight on what works, And number two is to build grassroots campaigns that are sustainable long after the president leaves office. Today, I'm going to give you an example of both. As the president often says, real change doesn't tend to begin inside of Washington. In fact, sometimes Washington is where good ideas come to die. However, we have great reason to be optimistic and hopeful because we have so many great examples of change happening around the country. And so I saw a great example of that yesterday. I visited, when I arrived in Los Angeles, I visited a superior court, juvenile court, I visited a juvenile detention center, and I visited Homeboy Cafe, which I encourage everyone to stop by and see. So in the court in Compton, I visited a new program called Star Court. And what we know is that more often than not, big cities are magnets for child trafficking. And there is an intersection between the important reforms that we need in criminal justice and human trafficking and the commercial exploitation of our children. And because of that, we know we need to focus on our big cities, but we may have to also spread out around the country. Well, Los Angeles is no exception to that problem. Young people are often arrested and tried for prostitutions when they are victims of sexual assault and rape. And we need to figure out how to help these young people restore their lives. And that's what is happening, and I encourage everybody to check out Commissioner Catherine Pratt's initiative there. I had lunch with several of the young women going through the program, and they were feeling love for the first time. And that was a common theme that I had yesterday. Women who, as young girls, had been discarded by families, who were forced onto the street, not running towards something, but running away from something. I had a meeting with girls in the detention center who explained to me that no one had ever said that they loved them except for their pimp. No one had ever nurtured them and encouraged them to stay in school. Drugs were abundant. The life of crime and the life of gangs was all that they knew. The women who I met from Homeboy talked about how a couple of them had lost permanent custody of their children when they were still minors themselves, and now 5-10 years later, they're living with the regret of the decisions they made. But what was, I thought, most optimistic is that notwithstanding growing up with no self-esteem, growing up with mental and physical abuse, growing up seduced by men who pretended to love them and exploited them, yet these young women were inspirational because they had been surrounded by a basket of love and hope and belief that they could turn their lives around. And it's an example of how when we come together and we take those holistic approaches where everybody feels invested in the future, there are no limits to what we can all do. One of the young women who I will never forget, who was in the detention center, I said to her, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And she said, "I want to be a pediatrician." And I said, "Well, where are you in school?" She said, "I just graduated from high school." And her face was just beaming. Notwithstanding these odds, she had graduated from high school. And so she's ready to go to college. And then I started to think about our It's On Us initiative. And I'm thinking, as a mom, here I am talking about and sending her to college, yet we know that 1 in 5 women are sexually assaulted on our college campuses. And so let's not fool ourselves into thinking that our young people who are fortunate enough to go into college can escape the very same trauma that happened to the women who I met who had lived on the streets. Sexual assault is sexual assault regardless of income, regardless of your economic status, regardless of your race. The trauma that it has on an individual can be permanent. And so we're going to stop it. And so the exciting part that I'm about to announce to you is in connection with our It's On Us initiative, which is designed to get everybody involved in the process. We have to get men to understand the importance of respecting women, and that begins when they are young boys. We need to ensure that when they get on their college campuses, the culture says what's acceptable and what is not acceptable. And thank you. I felt like that. One clap, absolutely. Because the fact of the matter is, sex without consent is not sex, it's rape. And in the words of our PSA, if you don't get it, meaning consent, then you don't get it. meaning sex. Thank you very much, everybody.